Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me here this afternoon. I'm going to start by asking the people who are with me and surround me to introduce themselves and any organization that they represent, and the spelling of their name for all of you to make it easier. I will start, although he of course needs no introduction. Rich Pachowski.
Rich Pachowski, Director of Syracuse United Neighbors, son, P-U-C-H-A-L-S-K-I.
Alan Hudson, Syracuse City Council, joining me.
Vincent Moody, with Real Fathers, Real Men.
Gwen Chafin, Community Organizer, Syracuse United Neighbors, and that's C-H-A-F-F-I-N.
Sharif Bey, Lead Organizer for Operation Proclamation, that's S-H-A-R-I-F-B-E-Y.
Khalid Bey, City Councilor, 4th District.
Dr. Ibrahim, E-M-A-D, R-A-H-I-M, resident and owner.
And each of the people standing here in front of you are city residents and taxpayers. I am joined today by these activists and city residents who joined with me because they understand, as everyone in the city of Syracuse and in this community understands, that there is a pressing need for jobs in our community. We have had a very fruitful discussion about the issues of concentrated poverty in the city of Syracuse, but you can't have a discussion about the issues of poverty without recognizing that the solution to poverty is jobs. Today, a developer went in front of the Onondaga County Industrial Development Agency for a first-of-its-kind move to get a payment in lieu of tax breaks from the Industrial Development Authority as opposed to the City of Syracuse. I and the city instituted legal action this afternoon against COR Development regarding the Inner Harbor tax deal and their transaction with the County Industrial Development Authority. There has been millions of dollars that have been pledged to the Inner Harbor project and that will be spent in the Inner Harbor project. Millions of dollars of taxpayer money. And yet the decision that was made today and the action taken by the County Industrial Development Agency has resulted in no commitments for jobs for Syracuse City residents. When we have a project that has had this much public money taken, and we don't use this as an opportunity to get jobs and job training for the people of our community, a real opportunity is lost. An opportunity to change the lives of people in our community, an opportunity to take a meaningful action at alleviating poverty and moving this community forward. This community has seen all too many times when we have allowed developers to promise us the world and not deliver on those promises. This action today allows the exact same thing to happen. And as the mayor of the city, I cannot stand by and allow a promise of trickle-down economics when the people in our community are hurting desperately for jobs. I worked with the state of New York to bring the Inner Harbor lands, as they are colloquially known, into the hands of the city of Syracuse so we could develop that parcel. It is waterfront parcels that are very valuable to this community. It is owned by the public. And I worked with the developer, my administration worked with the developer for 4 years. During that 4 years, the developer consistently said to me, to members of the Common Council, both publicly and privately, and to members of the media, that they would not ask for a payment in lieu of taxes. And yet that is exactly what they have done today. So, could you take this board up? I want to show you exactly what we are talking about and what is at issue with this tax break. The Inner Harbor Development has a commitment of $30 million in state funding. They're going to get the developers there roughly $29 million in property tax savings, roughly $13 million in sales tax savings, roughly $2.9 million in mortgage tax savings. That is $44.63 million in tax breaks. There has been no commitment made for Syracuse jobs. In a community that was recently rated #1 in the United States for concentrated poverty among minorities and Latinos. That is simply unacceptable. And together, we have said today with instituting this litigation that you can no longer tell the city government one thing and then do another. And that if you are going to ask for public benefits, then the community should get benefits in return for that. So with that, I would like to ask Councilor Bay to come up and say a few words as well.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody coming. For so many of you who I've spoken to before, you've heard this song and dance from me for the longest, right? You know, in order for the city's financial health to improve, we need jobs. You know, I want to point out this is often, sometimes the information is not so clear. We hear about 5.6% unemployment in the metropolitan area when in fact in the city of Syracuse we're at 9.3% unemployment, up from 8.9% just a year and a half ago. And while our unemployment rate continues to climb, while we continue to fight on the council, myself, Councilor Helen Hudson, and many others, make our case for opportunities, not only in terms of work, but even in terms of affordable living. Some of you hear it often. When a person comes to, or a company comes to the city for an incentive, we always make the demand for jobs. We always make the demand for affordable living. To have this kind of thing happens, I think, is a serious black eye to the taxpayer in the city. You know, I want to point out that I thought it was interesting, and I'll reiterate what I said earlier. For a organization like OCIDA, which is essentially a creature of the county and so the taxpayer, to stand right in front of the taxpayer and say, we're going to do what we wish with your money despite your concerns. No matter how much you tell us you don't want us to do this, we're going to do it anyway. I think is an absolute contradiction of what representative government is supposed to be. And so I want to express my appreciation to the people behind me and to so many others who are not here, who stand up and make the fight for jobs consistently, even when the cameras are off, and certainly express my appreciation for the mayor for standing with us and having the courage to take on a fight, quite frankly, that I think is one for the ages. You know, if we're looking to save our city, we're looking to create sustainability for families, we have to do what's right for the taxpayer, and not at the expense of the taxpayer. Do we? You know, and let me say this: there's often, and then I swear I'll shut up. But let me say this: you know, there's often a certain amount of spin that's put on discussions where, you know, businesses who, and I'm very pro-business, except when business is done at the expense of the taxpayer, right? Businesses who look to preserve themselves and their bottom line, you know, at our expense. The spin is often put on that, and the city is seen as anti-business. You know, and it's often forgotten that the city itself is a business, and we do business on behalf of the taxpayer. We have to effectively manage their money and their land resources and the like. And this is one of those scenarios where our efforts to be self-sustaining, which was essentially a demand of our governor, a demand even made by the feds that municipalities find a way to sustain themselves. When we make the effort to sustain ourselves, the carpet is snatched from under us. And I wanted to make that point because it doesn't sound sexy, and it shouldn't. You know, we need to call a spade, you know, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the outcome is with this court proceeding. It was the right move by the city, and I appreciate you all being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. So let me say a couple of things just also importantly. The Syracuse Industrial Development Agency has a provision in it which mandates and requires that there be minority and business and women-owned hiring. OCIDA does not. That there has been more development in the city of Syracuse in the last 5 years than there has been in the previous 10 to 15 years. As we have gone through those development projects and we've seen revitalization, whether it be downtown or whether we look at the projects that we have finished for the Joint School Construction Board, we have made a commitment to transparency and that the public benefits, that we will no longer say that developers get to set the terms and conditions upon which they do business with the city. Now, that means that developers don't always like to work with us. But we represent the people of the city of Syracuse. We do not represent developers. And accordingly, we hold them accountable for the commitments that they make and the money that they receive. What the Onondaga County Industrial Development Authority has done is it has said, City of Syracuse, every time you try to get a commitment from a developer, we are going to undercut you. And we are going to allow those developers to set the terms and conditions that they want. And that means that in a city that has the kind of poverty and issues that we struggle with, they have just undercut that. We will not stand idly by and allow that to happen. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that anybody has.
Mayor, where did you file the lawsuit, and what are the details on that, please?
The lawsuit was filed in the state Supreme Court today. Would be happy to provide a copy of the complaint to you. The complaint says that COR made representations to us, both orally and in writing, that guaranteed, they said they did not want a payment in lieu of tax agreement from us. And then we, in turn, made commitments and did things for them. Transferred property for them, gave them $1.5 million grant for infrastructure, did a number of things based on the commitments that they made to us that they did not want to negotiate, were not interested in negotiating a payment in lieu of tax agreement. Again, a number of those commitments were made in some of your employers covered those. Had they said to us that they were going to have a pilot agreement, we would have made decisions differently. Had they said to us that they were going to go to Onondaga County for a pilot agreement, there would have been different decisions made.
And what is the timeline? Do you have a hearing date? Do you have?
They have, I'm told they have 20 days to answer.
Do you think we'd still be in the same situation if COR had gone to CIDA rather than OCIDA?
I don't, because I think it's been very clear that both as a city and the Syracuse Industrial Development Authority, that if they had come to us for tax benefits through a pilot agreement, we would have negotiated a commensurate community benefit, which in all likelihood would have been jobs and job training.
Mayor, can you explain a little bit about how OCIDA, just to speak briefly about how OCIDA can provide a pilot agreement from the city?
Well, what has historically happened is that there has been an unwritten practice where OCIDA would not provide pilot benefits within the jurisdiction of the City of Syracuse. But because the City of Syracuse is within the jurisdiction of Onondaga County, the state law allows them to do that. We first saw this happen, or the threat of this, roughly last year when the Destiny developer said that they wanted to build a hotel. And they said that they would not come to the City of Syracuse because I had been very clear that I thought that they had been given a 30-year tax break, and of the commitments that they had made to the public was to build a hotel. And I didn't see the merit or the benefit to the public to go back to that. They then said they were going to go to Onondaga County, and you heard the current chairman of the legislature talk about that, and that he was interested in doing that. So this came about, this first threat came about because of Destiny, because we weren't willing to give them more tax breaks than they already had. I also think it shouldn't be lost on anybody that Pat Hogan, who's a member of the Onondaga County Industrial Development Authority, and Ryan McMahon, who appoints the majority of the members of the Onondaga County Industrial Development Authority, were both ardent supporters of the Destiny project, a project which I was not a supporter of, and said that we should get real benefits from the public and they should be written into a contract. They weren't, and then when the Destiny developer said, oh, we're finished, we don't have to do any more, you saw outrage go through the public. What we're seeing here is a return to that old, bad economic development policy.
Stephanie, why now? Why not say something publicly before the vote?
Because there was always the possibility that they would negotiate. There was always the possibility that they would come and talk to us about this. And we didn't know whether they were really going to do it until they did it. So legally, this case was not ripe until they actually made this decision.
Did you approach the OCIDA yourself or the county executive to try to work something out?
I did not, but others have approached them. And there have been discussions. And I will tell you that there was an affirmative obligation on behalf of the developer to notify me that they were going to OCIDA. They failed to meet that. OCIDA and the members of OCIDA never gave the city the professional courtesy of alerting us that they were doing this. and they also failed some of their obligations in terms of notification. I found it both telling, but also repelling that they would have a public hearing without anybody showing up. That they would move their voting meeting to 8 o'clock in the morning, all of which was done to escape or to keep the public as far away from them as possible. When you are looking at the millions of dollars of taxpayer money that's involved here, and that's the way you treat the taxpayers and the people of the city of Syracuse, they have a different view of what representative democracy is than I do.
And what are you asking the court to do?
I'm asking the court to rescind, among the things that I'm asking the court to do is to rescind the Inner Harbor Development Agreement and property transactions that we have entered into.
This is an Article 78.
No, it is formally, this is an equitable proceeding under terms of fraudulent inducement.
So is it against OCIDA?
No, it's against COR.
Do you think there are some good aspects to this deal that, you know, that they made with OCIDA, just in terms of, because when we were at the meeting today, one of the things they threw out was, let's say, $100 million that could be generating tax revenue over this 15-year deal?
You know, Tom, I would tell you that I am biased on that because I cut my teeth as a city councilor listening to Bob Conjal and others from Destiny talk about millions and millions and millions of dollars and nothing like it in the world that was going to rain down on all of us, and it never happened. So when I hear developers talk about millions of dollars but not commit to anything, when I see millions of dollars in public money being spent on a project and I can't point to a hard and fast commitment for a community benefit, then I am at a loss as to whether there will actually be.
Could you provide a little bit more detail on the $30 million in state funding?
That's through 4 rounds of REDC.
And what is the number at the bottom of the schools?
That is the amount of money that the school district is losing because of this pilot agreement. So the Onondaga County Industrial Development Agency this morning took away $16.1 million in taxes from our financially challenged and underfunded school district. So again, another important element here is who are the biggest losers here? The biggest losers are the children of the city of Syracuse because the biggest share of our property taxes goes to the school district. So without hearing from the school district, by the way, something that they have asked for when they went to West Genesee and to other places, they asked for the school boards in those respective jurisdictions to weigh in on the pilot, whether it was appropriate or not. They did not ask our school district to do that. Again, the most challenged school district in this community, without hearing from them, without asking that, the same right that they have given to other school districts, they took away $16.1 million from them.
Despite the best intentions of including community benefits within legislation, does the city, I guess in this case, run any risk of what we have seen happen where developers just decide to jump ship and run to the county agency? You know?
Well, that's exactly what happened here. So really the question is for us and for policyholders in the city of Syracuse, but for the people of this community. Is that what we want? Do we want to race to the bottom? Because that's what we got. So I would say that to you that you saw, and I was heartened by, the amount of public attention to the poverty issue that we have in our community. Here's an opportunity to start making a real dent in that. And the policyholders of Onondaga County turned their back on it.
So what impact is this going to have on efforts to consolidate, streamline?
I think it's going to have a very negative impact because when you have a process like this and the policyholders refused to listen to people from, and not just refused to hear them, actually refused to be in the same room when they made their statements in a public hearing, and then took away a privilege or a right from the people of the city of Syracuse or the school district that they gave to other school districts, and then failed to recognize that there was an opportunity to put people to work here and train people for jobs, which is one of the, if not the preeminent issue facing the city of Syracuse, then you have to say that they not only don't understand the issues facing the city of Syracuse, they don't care to understand them.
you spoken with John Mahoney at all on this
I have not.
issue?
I have not.
Is there some sort of plan or idea you have in your head? Because like, you know, the prospect of like redeveloping this land, it's exciting, you know, this creation of a new neighborhood. Is there, you know, if this falls apart, you know, is there any way to sort of keep that dream and hope?
Of course, of course. For 4 years we've done it, we can do it again. We have entered a different time in terms of economic development than we were in 5-10 years ago. 5-10 years ago, the Destiny developer said we are the only game in town. Nobody says that anymore. They understand that there is viable development going on in the city of Syracuse and people want to be here. But I want to make sure that the people of the city of Syracuse get a benefit from it, not just wealthy developers.
The developer has said that the reason they went to the county IDA was because of this recent dispute over the tax assessment on the property. I think, you feel that is not the reason why they went there?
Correct. I don't feel that, because first of all, they instituted litigation, they settled the litigation, they continued to work with us for 6 months after that, number one. Number two, they talked about certainty for the assessment. The assessment is certain. The number was settled at, that's the number. The county cannot change the assessment. And so I believe that the real reason that they did not come to the city of Syracuse is because they knew that we would ask for a community benefit agreement whereby people from the city of Syracuse had jobs.
And just to be clear, OCIDA does not have a requirement of a community benefit agreement.
It does not.
And generally, I don't think any previous pilot agreement that they've approved has had one. Are you now going to require that for all projects, or just for this one because of the public investment?
Well, this was the largest public investment that we have seen, I think, that has come through my administration. But let me give you another comparison. With the Joint Schools Construction Board Phase 1 that came through, we had very ambitious goals for minority participation and minority contracting, 10% and 15%. We met and exceeded those goals. So when you have a large project that has the kind of public subsidy involved that we're talking about here, and I think the most analogous comparison is the Joint Schools Construction Board, we have done that there.
And just because you're asking the court to rescind the vote that OCIDA took?
No, I'm asking the court to rescind the contract between the city of Syracuse and COR Development in regard to the properties of the Inner Harbor.
What would that mean if that is rescinded? Would they have to give that land back to the city?
Yes.
And the money benefits.
They'd have to, I guess that it would depend on what each of the different government levels would say about those.
So you have an agreement with them, essentially a contract, and you're saying that they broke that?
I am.
Agreement?
Yep.
And so they should be required to handle
I'm saying
it?
not only that they broke it, but they fraudulently broke it. That they made commitments in writing, they made oral commitments to several bodies of the city government that they would not seek a pilot, and that they waited until they got the last penultimate group of lands transferred for the Inner Harbor. 13 days after we transferred the land to them, they went to Onondaga County's Industrial Development Authority and requested a pilot. Unbeknownst to us, with no notification as required by law, with no discussion, with no professional courtesies at all.
And that was 13 days after the city transferred the 4 parcels?
Correct.
Okay. Those 4 parcels were transferred all at the same time?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Now, there's a 5th one that has not been transferred.
Correct.
If the status quo remains here, would the city refuse to transfer that?
Well, status quo is an interesting term. We could come back and talk to us about what that means. But I'm just talking about the 4 parcels I'm looking at right now. All of this is in the complaint.
And you mentioned that they made these promises in writing, because it was a little unclear. Did they make that promise just for the hotel that they're building, the A-Loft? Because they're saying, oh, we made that promise for the A-Loft, but we didn't say for the rest of the project.
Let me say something about that. So we just made a promise for the A-Loft, but now we went to Onondaga County for the Industrial Development Authority, and that hotel can be included under the pilot. So we made the promise just for the hotel, but now we're not even going to keep the promise for the hotel under what the IDA did, number one. Number two, they made commitments to at least 3 people here, me, Councilor Bay, and Councilor Hudson was also witness to the commitment, that they would not ask for a pilot. They also made it in writing as part of the agreement, as part of the financing and governmental incentives, as part of their proposal that they gave to the city. They did not list a pilot agreement in there. And also, in December of 2013, I was told they would not be seeking a pilot.
Can we get a copy of that?
Of course, yep, of course.
When did you sign the agreement for that's in question in this court proceeding?
Boy, 2011, I think. 2011. Could have been 2011 or early 2012. Anybody else? All right, thank you all very much.